You're listening to the OK Dad podcast.
Please leave your message for
Daddy.
Okay, Dad podcast. Let's start this thing.
Can you not put that on YouTube?
You're listening to my husband talk a lot.
All right, and we're back. I'm your host, Brian Vasquez, and welcome to the OK Dad podcast. Let's just get to work. So, something that is coming up pretty close, it's going to be this weekend, is Father's Day. So, all you dads out there, happy Father's Day. All you moms out there or guardians, anybody putting in that work, happy Father's Day. You know, it's a tremendous amount of work to put in, be a child's father, role figure, model, whether you're a grandparent, a spouse, a single person raising a child. Like it's a ton of work. You're raising a human being. You're raising somebody to be hopefully a productive member of society. You're raising somebody that you want to instill values and morals, and this person that you have, you're creating another member of society, hopefully a productive one and a nice one and a genuine one. Well, this Father's Day is coming up, and it's going to be, I don't know how many Father's Days this would be for me, but I know it's not the first one for me anymore, and now it's 3 times over. I have my daughter, who's about to be a teenager. She's a preteen right now. I have my son, who's a little toddler, a little 3-year-old, and our newborn son, Oliver, who is right around 3 months. He's going to be 3 months. He's actually 3 months tomorrow. So it's good. I'm not sure what to do for Father's Day. I'm thinking maybe just sit back and grill, take a drive somewhere. Some barbecue is definitely on my mind. I'm not sure what's going to happen. So all of y'all that are out there, happy Father's Day. I do appreciate you. I know that your kiddos do as well. But I have not much on my mind this week, and I kind of wanted to just open it up and see whatever comes out. So what I have been thinking about lately is, and get this is not something crazy, but how you grew up. So the last podcast I talked about work ethic, and it got me thinking a little bit about schooling. And I was wondering if there was anybody that's vital in your life that's kind of a role model, but not necessarily your parents. And I talked a little bit about my personal life growing up in school. And early on, I was a troublemaker. I was a kid that was so talkative, always kicking and screaming, never went down easy, couldn't just comply. And I remember early on, it was a big issue. Kindergarten was a crazy big issue. I never went to pre-K. It was a real issue in kindergarten. I wouldn't, from what I remember as a child, I didn't get along with everybody. I definitely didn't get along with the teacher. Then first grade happened. I don't even recall the first grade teacher, but same issues, talking too much, disruptive in class, playing around, class clown. And after that, we decided I went to the next grade up, so the second grade. And same kind of issues, like always teasing somebody else, talkative in class, disruptive. And so I went to the second grade, and during that time there was a parent-teacher conference. And even before this parent-teacher conference, I remember distinctively there was something that happened at school, and my grandfather came and picked me up because they wanted me to just get out of school. So my grandfather comes and he picks me up, and I'm scared because I'm thinking I'm gonna get in trouble. My dad's gonna be upset with me. My mother's gonna ground me. And my grandfather's there. He's the one that picks me up. My mother worked for the school district, so she was working. My father was somewhere on the other side of town working, and my grandfather picks me up, and he kind of just levels with me and says like, "Hey, what happened?" And I'm like, "Oh, this happened." He's like, "Okay, well, you want to go get some ice cream?" And me being in second grade, I'm like, well, yeah, I want to get some ice cream. So he takes me, we go get ice cream. And when I look back on that, that's probably not the best move when we're trying to inspire and be a role model. as a grandfather, it's great. Like I'm so lucky to have those memories with my grandfather. He was always there, caring, nurturing, and something that would come up from my mother is that the grandfather the grandpa today is not the father that I had. So you should be lucky to have that. And a while ago, when I was talking to one of my cousins, he says, and if you haven't heard that podcast, that's a pretty good one, Chris Corman's. He said that our children today will never know what we went through, no matter how much we tell them. And it's true. We can tell somebody how lucky they are, how good they have it, but they have nothing to compare it to other than talk. So we can talk all we want about it, but they're going to have nothing to compare their lives to at all because they're only living their lives, which I 100% agree. Like we can't show somebody else just by words or pictures because we lived through it. And right now they're living through their own lives. It's difficult. Can't do it. And like my mother's right. Like he was not the man he is today when he was a father. Whether he was trying to make up for it, whether he was just being a grandfather, whatever it was, it didn't help me become a better child or a more strict kid, or he didn't lead me into following the rules. He didn't pull me away. He was just showing me like, hey, if you get in trouble and I pick you up, like we're going to get ice cream, which second grader for me, I was like, all right, let's go get some ice cream, Grandpa. Like, I'm glad you picked me up. And as we move forward, there was another incident at school where, and I remember this one because it got me kicked out. I was joking with a pair of scissors, and I had a pair of scissors in my hand, and I would make the scissor noise with it. I put the scissors down, and then I grabbed somebody's hair, and then I went like that with my finger, and like the girl, super upset. There was no hair anywhere. I was trying to like say, hey, it's a joke. Like I didn't actually do it. Nope, straight to the office. Parent, teacher, principal conference, like immediately. My mom came that time to pick me up, so she left work, and we ended up just taking me out of the school, putting me in another elementary school. And that was, to me, I'm like, okay, cool. Like I'm trying to tell you that these teachers don't like me here. These teachers don't like me. And I'm a second grader. And it was partly true. Like, yeah, this little troublemaker kid, like I'm tired of him. Totally get that from their end. On my end, I was a troublemaker kid too. So like teachers definitely had the right mentality there. I go over to a new elementary school. I get this teacher. This gentleman's a teacher. I'm like, cool. It's a guy. I can level with him. We can just be friends or whatever. And this was my first instance of the gifted and talented program, and you had to have a certain GPA to make it in. And after a few weeks in his class, like we had those talks like, hey, you could be eligible, but I talk too much, I'm disruptive, I get others off task. So like that wasn't even a thing for me. It was no, you're not going to have that because you got to work on these things. You keep having behavioral problems. So I wasn't eligible for it. And I would finish my work in class, and like I said before, I would get A's and B's. I wasn't like a valedictorian or anything, but I would finish my work in class, and then I would see the gifted and talented program just working in the corner on something like really cool. And I'm like, that seems really cool, but like now I'm bored. I got nothing to do. Like, let me start talking to the guy next to me. Let me start throwing spitballs or whatever at the person in front of me. I'm not sure if I threw spitballs or not. I probably did. It was third grade. And I just remember that distinctly, and he wouldn't put me in it. I was disruptive, A's and B's still, and there wasn't anything crazy at that point. Like the temper tantrums weren't there like a toddler, but it was just I knew how to skirt that line and then a little bit more. So I would be talking in class, disruptive. I'd start talking to other people in class next to me, disrupt their work. So it was definitely disrupting everybody's work. I would make jokes and everybody would laugh. I was a horrible kid. And there was a time in the library. So I'm a third grader in this second school. And there was a time in the library where same thing, like the librarian is reading a story to all these kids. And I'm over here cracking jokes about it. And it was Captain Underpants. She's reading Captain Underpants. I'm cracking jokes. So he tells me like, get up, come outside. So he takes me into the stairwells. The school had 2 stairwells, a third grader. And then he starts talking to me aggressively like, hey, why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep disrupting my class? And I'm like, I have no excuse. Like, I'm just talking. And he's like, oh, okay. You think you're a big man? And I'm like, what? Like, I didn't comprehend. I'm a third grader. He said, you think you're a big man? Like, why don't you hit me? And at this point, I'm so confused. And so I start crying. I'm a third grader and I just start bawling like, no, like, I don't want to fight an adult. And because I wasn't this big bad like troublemaker, I was just disruptive. I talked a lot. I made too many jokes. I skirted the line. And he's telling me this, and he's telling me this aggressively. And then he puts his hands on my shoulders and pushes me into the wall. And my back hits the wall. I get the air knocked out of me. And he says, come on, you're a big man. Why don't you hit me? And I'm like, at this point, I start crying even more. And he does it again. He's like, come on, Brian, why don't you hit me? You're so big and you're always making jokes and stuff. And I'm crying like, all right, like I'm going to get spanked or whatever's going to happen. Because my father did, if you listen to some of my other episodes, my father did spank me. But at this time, like I have a teacher like slam me up against the wall. And in I don't know what this is, the 90s, 97? It was before 2000. Maybe it was 2001. No, it was in the 90s that he's doing this to me. So, like, it's not uncommon for a parent, a family member to spank you or maybe like even slap a kid or something like that. But so nothing in my mind is saying like, oh, this adult shouldn't be putting hands on me. I'm just scared now that, okay, like maybe I did cross the line. And, you know, I went home, really didn't even tell my parents. There was nobody to tell at school. Like, I was a troublemaker. Like, who would believe me? I ended up telling my parents later in life about it. And not like, I don't, even to this day, I'm not sure how to even react about it. Because one, like, I understand, like, I was a kid, I was a troublemaker. It's pretty hard being a teacher. Like, that's probably a teacher's dream to like, hey, stop doing this. You're disrupting my class. So like, I get that. If that happened to one of my kids today, like that, there'd be a whole longer conversation and I would want an investigation into a teacher. But in the 90s for myself, it wasn't too bizarre, but like looking back on it, you would think that would do something to a child, and it really didn't. I stayed disruptive. I stayed talking in class. Nothing crazy happened. And moving up through the grades, I think it was 4th grade there, I had a teacher, and her name was Miss Lasoya. And same thing. I was disruptive. I was talkative. I got others off task. And she noticed it. I wasn't, like I said, not the smartest guy, not the smartest crayon in the light bulbs. But she noticed it. You know, I had a little bit something extra. And she would take time to talk to me and kind of calm me down instead of just sending me to the office every single time. So I kind of grew this respect for her. Like, okay, like this is a teacher. I can tell that this person genuinely cares about me, even though there's 30 other kids in this classroom. And I held her dear to my heart. Like, she really helped me kind of focus on some things. Like, had some anger issues. So she really kind of like reined those in. And moving on, that's when I started to notice that theater arts was kind of a big thing in the middle school that I was going to. Fast forward to middle school, still kind of disruptive, but you got a lot more stuff to focus on, so it wasn't that much in class. Like, there wasn't anything crazy. Like, I wouldn't be able to just finish all the work in one class and then move on, since everything's like within an hour time frame. But I was still disruptive, still talkative. And there's a couple teachers there where one teacher just absolutely did not like me. There's a few of them. And the art teacher just didn't like me at all. It was to the point to where I really wasn't trying to do anything. She had me sit in the back of the class. I was like, I'm fine back here. Like, I'm not very artistic. And I would finish work. Somebody else would make a joke or make some noise, and she would just assume it was me. And at this point, like, I'm starting to mature a little bit. I'm starting to grow up, trying to like impress like friends and stuff. So like I'm really just sticking to myself in this art class because I'm not artistic. One, I don't have a lot of like friends that are in my art class at this time. I'm sitting in the back. Like there's really nothing for me to do. I had really long hair, so I'd kind of like put earbuds in. And yeah, she would just get super upset with me, even though it wasn't me. Nobody else would own up to it because we're middle school. And nobody's going to say, hey, I'm the one that did it. And it was just so bizarre. And she would talk to the theater arts teacher and tell her how like bad of a student I am. And the theater arts teacher just wouldn't believe her because I was in rehearsals. I was doing stuff after school with her. And she's like, no, he's a good kid. So like the second teacher to come into my life was Miss Gable, my theater arts teacher. And she's just a blessing to have in my life as a kid who doesn't really have much going on. And it was difficult for me to stay after school, one, to hang out with friends because I lived in a different neighborhood. Since my mother worked for the district, I was able to go into that district and go into those schools. But because I lived so far away, I couldn't just walk home from school. I couldn't just stay at a friend's house and then walk to my house or have my parents pick me up later. So it was hard maintaining like some solid friendships there or even like connecting them there. And like theater arts kind of held me the whole time. There was another teacher who she like point blank told me like, hey, nobody's going to believe you because you're a troublemaker. They're going to believe me because I'm a teacher. Like, I need you to stop. And I'm like, okay, like I understand. She's like, no, like I'm going to get you in trouble and I'm going to tell the teachers and I'm going to tell the principal. And that was bizarre to me because I'm like, okay, like, is this a TV show? Like, are you threatening me? And she's like, yes, I'm threatening you. And I'm like, oh, I have no answer to that. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, you're threatening me. I should probably stop. So I thought I stopped in her class. Apparently I did it. She like had a vendetta against me. And like years later, my theater arts teacher, who I still maintain contact with, she tells me, yeah, she did. She did not like you at all. She hated you, but like she also had a lot going on in her personal life because as kids, we don't think about teachers and what they have going on in their personal life. So that's really hard to even see that picture as a child. But that's when I started to really grow up, I think. My father had taken me to a juvenile detention center. He had taken me to he just drove up to a cop that was just pulled over in like a parking lot. And he got out of the car, he talked to him, and then all of a sudden the cop came and talked to me, and we had like a good 5-10 minute conversation, and the cop's name was Brian as well, which is crazy. And that kind of really opened my eyes, you know. My father would always, one thing he would do to kind of go back to what I was talking about with my cousin Chris is anytime there was something on TV or somebody was underprivileged, my dad would just yell at me to come over, and then he would show me and say, see how lucky you are? And I talk about it before. It kind of loses its meaning if we're doing it so repetitively. But it is something that's good to remind ourselves, like how lucky we are at times. There's people that just went into a hospital yesterday or this morning, or as we're listening to this right now, that are wishing they had the same opportunities that we have right now. There's some people that lose their ability to walk. All they want to do is walk. Some people lose hearing, lose a hand. Some people can't even dress themselves when a week ago they were able to. And so small things, like we lose that perspective on it, like how grateful we really are. Or people who have disabilities, they can still get themselves dressed. They can still like pour a glass of water. We lose sight of all those small things and we kind of just focus on ourselves. And as it does come close to Father's Day, like I do thank all you dads and everybody out there putting in work, but also we wouldn't even need to be putting in this work if it wasn't for our kids, if it wasn't for a group of us, because nobody got anywhere by themselves. Something was created and we use that creation to create from us. So everything that we have, this microphone somebody created, I'm using to create this. Somebody created these lights that I have here. Somebody created this wallpaper, this ring. Somebody created all this and we're using it to create something else. You know, like my ring symbolizes my marriage with my wife. Everything is made from something else. The metal that was used was made to make the ring, and we kind of lose sight of the big picture sometimes, and we tend to focus on ourselves. And I started maturing there in middle school some more. Fast forward to high school, whole different ballpark. Like, there's juniors and seniors that are driving. Like, you're such a small fish now in the ocean. You came from a pond. You're feeling all these emotions. Now there's people from 2-3 different middle schools that are going there. And here it was crazy because I felt the want to do something. I saw that everybody like had roles and everybody had different like stuff that they were working on, and I just kind of wanted that. I wanted to be involved. Like, theater arts was big. I knew that like school pride was big. We had a really killer football team for 1 year out of the whole time that I was there, and it was just a really cool environment. So I spent a lot of time there. I think growing up, just being involved as much as I can with theater, being involved with like academia. I was part of a math club. Shout out math club, and by far, probably the worst person on that math club. All my friends were super smart and they were like killing it. I was not. I was probably there for like moral support. I was in like the Rotary Club, which was kind of nice. Like, being part of the Rotary Club and helping out the community, that kind of opened my eyes up too. And that's the kind of stuff I want to instill in my children, or mine and my wife's, our children. I want to inspire like a want to help the community, a need to keep growing yourself, whether it be emotionally, spiritually, financially. There's so much that we can do on, but not tipping the scales too great in one direction. Like, I wouldn't want them focusing all about just gaining money in life. I wouldn't want them solely focusing on just going all in spiritually. I wouldn't focus on them going like all in just in education, just getting a degree, not worrying about the bigger picture. I wouldn't want them going like all in to just a relationship and lacking everywhere else. Trying to instill all that. It's a tough job. That's why there's Father's Day. That's why there's Mother's Day. Just kind of celebrate all the work that we're putting in. But going and doing those things, it's not an easy task. It's a tough job. And so everybody out there trying and just putting in work, like, I appreciate you. I thank you. It takes a lot, and there's different stuff. There's different activities. There's different experiences that happen that aren't going to happen to our children. There's the experiences that we have. Unfortunately, we can't recreate those. And if we do, they may not get the same experience that you got out of it. If you find $5 on a hot summer day going to the store to pick up, a Little Debbie snack, it'll probably buy a good amount of Little Debbie snacks back in the 90s. Like me and my cousins and my sister used to do when we walked to the store. Now, if you find $5, you can probably get a bag of chips and a Coke, but you're not feeding 3 or 4 people on $5. So how would we recreate that for somebody else, for our children? Like, drop $20 on the floor, have them find it? Like, no experience is going to be the same. Our children have different experiences as they grow up. So them finding something is kind of like, oh, cool, nice. At least it is for my daughter. That's how my daughter reacts. You can give her $100 or you can give her $5. And she's like, oh, cool, thanks. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because one, like, she's like, okay, cool. So I like how money doesn't just like control her like ego and like, yes, I need more money. But I also want her to be like, that's $100. Like, let's be pretty wise with it. And either way that you go with her, oh, cool. And so that could be good or bad, but it's something that we can't do. And every child's different. As I was talking to someone the other day about our sons, they were saying, like, isn't that crazy how, like, at such an early age they have such different personalities? Because Asher hated anybody else that wasn't his mom or me, and he didn't even like me at the beginning, the first couple of months. And Oliver Oliver can get stolen pretty easy. We'll give him to our friend. She'll pick him up. She'll walk around the park with him, and Oliver will just be there smiling at her. And that was not happening with Asher. Asher would not let anybody else touch him, get near to him, try to talk to him. But old little Ollie, he'll let anybody pick him up and grab him. He'll smile. Even all the other kids are around him, tickling his feet and touching his hands. And he's just smiling at them, giggling. Like it's amazing how just personalities in a 2-month-old, a 3-month-old are so different. So to recreate all these emotions, experiences, it's difficult. So what I would encourage y'all to do is handle every situation unique to your child and see how it goes. So every situation is different. You know, I have to handle Asher differently than I handled my daughter. I have to handle Oliver different than I'm handling Asher and my daughter. And when you figure that out first, it makes it a lot harder. But in the end, I'm hoping we'll see some really good results. I'm hoping we're doing maybe not the best job, but maybe a okay enough job, maybe an okay dad job on it. But all y'all out there, once more, happy Father's Day. This is Brian signing off. There you go.
He's really big and he's strong. And he's really nice.